Your car is now a power plant, and you can get paid for it. What if I told you that the car sitting in your driveway right now could be earning you money while you sleep? Not hypothetically, not someday, not in 5 years when the technology catches up. Right now, today, if you have the right vehicle and live in the right state, your electric car can literally sell power back to the grid automatically while you do nothing. You wake up in the morning, check your account, and there's money there that wasn't there the night before. Money your car made without you driving anywhere. General Motors just flipped this switch for over 250,000 vehicles. Ford did it with the F-150 Lightning years ago. Tesla just launched a vehicle-to-grid pilot with Pacific Gas and Electric in California in April 2026. And most EV owners have absolutely no idea any of this is happening. This is the video that changes that. Let's back up and start from the beginning, because to understand why this is such a big deal, you need to understand a little bit about how the electric grid actually works. The grid is basically a giant balancing act that happens every single second of every single day. On one side, you have power plants generating electricity. On the other side, you have millions of homes, businesses, and factories using it. The people who run the grid have one job: keep those two sides perfectly matched. Too much supply and the system gets unstable. Too much demand and you get blackouts. For most of history, the only way to handle demand spikes was to fire up what are called peaker plants. These are power plants that sit dormant most of the time and only kick on during peak demand periods, like hot summer afternoons when everyone gets home from work and cranks the air conditioning at the same time. They're expensive to run, they're often dirty, and they're only needed for a few hours a day. Here's where your car comes in. The average electric vehicle on the road today has a battery pack that holds somewhere between 60 and 100 kilowatt hours of energy. The average American home uses about 30 kilowatt hours of electricity per day, which means the battery in your car, if fully charged, could power your entire house for 2 to 3 days. That battery has been sitting in your driveway, mostly idle, doing nothing. What if instead of doing nothing, it was doing something? What if the grid could reach out to your car during those peak demand hours, pull a little bit of power out of it to help balance the system, and pay you for the electricity it uses? And what if your car then quietly recharged itself overnight when electricity is cheap, so you wake up with a full battery and a little extra money in your pocket? That is exactly what vehicle-to-grid technology does. And it's not a future thing, it is a right-now thing. Let me walk you through what's actually available today, because the landscape has changed fast. General Motors made a move in early 2026 that almost nobody covered the way it deserved. They released a software update for their GM energy system that enables vehicle-to-grid capability for compatible models. We're talking the Chevy Silverado EV, the Chevy Equinox EV, the GMC Hummer EV, and several Cadillac models. More than 250,000 vehicles on US roads became capable of selling power back to the grid with a software update. Not a new car, not new hardware, a software update they pushed over the air like a phone update. Here's how it works in practice. You enroll your vehicle in GM's program through the GM Energy app. During peak demand periods, which typically happen between 4 in the afternoon and 9 at night, the utility company can pull a small, predetermined amount of power from your battery. Your car automatically recharges at off-peak rates overnight when electricity is cheapest, and you receive either bill credits or direct payments depending on which utility you're with and which state you live in. GM gets a small cut of what the utility pays. You get the rest. The math works out to somewhere between a few hundred and over $1,000 a year, depending on your location and how often peak events are called. Ford got to this party even earlier with the F-150 Lightning. The Lightning has had vehicle-to-home capability since it launched, meaning during a power outage it can keep your whole house running. But Ford has also been moving toward vehicle-to-grid, where the truck pushes power not just to your home but back to the utility itself. For a lot of working families in rural areas where outages are common, this alone is worth the price of admission. A fully charged Lightning can run a typical home for 3 to 10 days depending on what you're powering. Then there's Tesla. On April 20th, 2026, Pacific Gas and Electric and Tesla announced a vehicle-to-grid pilot program in California specifically for Cybertruck owners. Cybertruck owners in PG&E territory can now enroll to sell power back to the California grid during peak demand periods. PG&E is offering up to $4,500 in incentives for eligible applicants to cover the cost of the bidirectional charging hardware. And California has been laying the legislative groundwork to make this available even more broadly through Senate Bill 913, which if passed would essentially open up a much larger and more lucrative market for homeowners with batteries to bid into. Now, the obvious question is, what about people who don't have an EV? Great question, because there's a parallel development happening for people with solar panels, home batteries, or even just a regular home that wants to participate in the energy market. It's called the virtual power plant, and it's one of the most genuinely interesting ideas in energy right now. Here's how a virtual power plant works. A company or utility aggregates thousands of individual home batteries, whether they're in cars, standalone home systems like a Tesla Powerwall or an Enphase system, or even smart thermostats and water heaters. They bundle all that distributed storage together into what looks like, from the grid's perspective, one large power plant. When the grid needs extra power, they send a signal, and all those individual batteries discharge a little bit simultaneously. The combined output can rival a traditional power plant. The homeowners each get a small payment. Nobody has to do anything manually. The software handles everything automatically. Tesla already has a virtual power plant program running in California for Powerwall owners. If you have a Powerwall and you're in PG&E or Southern California Edison territory, you can enroll today. Participants report earning between $200 and $1,000 a year for doing literally nothing. The Powerwall handles its own dispatch. You just check your account every now and then to see what came in. And the numbers are expected to go up significantly as more utilities open up their markets to this kind of distributed storage. Let's talk about the real-world numbers for a second, because I want to be honest with you about what to expect. The earnings from vehicle-to-grid and virtual power plant programs are not going to make you rich. Let's be clear about that. We're not talking about quitting your job money. What we're talking about is a passive revenue stream that requires zero effort on your part once you're enrolled, that partially offsets the cost of owning an EV or a home battery system, and that gets more valuable over time as more utilities open up their markets. Right now, in active markets like California, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and parts of Texas, the more generous programs can get you somewhere in the range of $200 to $1,500 a year. Some programs pay in direct cash, some pay in bill credits. A few larger home battery setups in favorable rate territories are seeing returns that shorten the payback period on their battery investment by 2 to 3 years. The key variables are your location, your utility, the size of your battery, how often peak events are called in your area, and which specific program you enroll in. Now let me talk about the big picture, because there's a reason this technology is being pushed so hard right now, and it has everything to do with what's happening to the electric grid. The grid in America is under enormous strain. AI data centers are being built at a pace that nobody predicted just a few years ago, each one consuming as much electricity as a small city. Electric vehicles are adding demand. Heat pumps are replacing gas heating. The summer of 2024 saw record heat waves that pushed grids in multiple states to the edge of their capacity. And at the same time, the old solution for peak demand, building more peaker plants, is slow, expensive, and increasingly unpopular. Nobody wants a power plant built near their neighborhood. The new solution, which the grid operators and utilities are increasingly betting on, is distributed energy resources, which is a fancy term for using the batteries already sitting in people's driveways and garages to do what peaker plants used to do, just distributed across millions of locations instead of concentrated in a few. Your car is not just a car anymore. It is literally a node in the energy grid of the future, and the utilities are willing to pay you to be part of that network. There are a few things worth knowing before you get too excited. First, not every EV is capable of this. Bidirectional charging, which is what allows power to flow out of your car and back to the grid, requires specific hardware. Most older EVs, and even some newer ones, only charge in one direction. They can take power from the grid, but they can't push it back. The Cybertruck, the F-150 Lightning, the GM models mentioned earlier, certain Hyundai Ioniq 5 and 6 models, and the Kia EV6 are among the models with bidirectional capability. If you have a standard Tesla Model 3, Model Y, Model S, or Model X, those currently cannot push power back to the grid as of mid-2026. Tesla has said bidirectional charging is coming to those models but hasn't announced specific timing. Second, you'll need the right charger. A standard level 2 charger at home is not bidirectional. You need a specific bidirectional charger that allows power to flow both ways. These cost more than standard chargers, but the incentive programs available in many states offset a significant portion of that cost. Third, your utility has to support it. This is the biggest limiting factor right now. Vehicle-to-grid and virtual power plant programs are not available everywhere. They're concentrated in states with active energy markets and progressive utility regulations. California is the most developed. Parts of New England, Texas, and the Pacific Northwest are getting there. The Midwest and the South are further behind, but catching up. The honest answer to the question of whether this is worth pursuing depends on where you live. If you're in California and you have a bi-directional EV or a home battery, enrolling in an available program is a no-brainer. It costs you nothing. The app does everything automatically, and you get paid. If you're in a state where these programs don't exist yet, it's worth knowing about and watching, because the trend is clearly moving in this direction. What you're really looking at here is the early stages of a fundamental shift in how the energy grid works. The model of large centralized power plants pushing electricity out to passive consumers is giving way to a network where millions of homes, cars, and batteries are active participants in balancing the grid, not just using it. The people who understand this shift early are the ones who will be positioned to benefit from it as the programs expand, the payments increase, and the technology becomes standard in every new EV on the market. Your car has been sitting in the driveway. It's time it started earning its keep. If this video made you think about your energy situation differently, hit subscribe. We cover the technologies that are quietly changing how regular people live and earn before they become mainstream news. The next video in this series is going to blow your mind even more. We're going to talk about a completely new type of battery that's made from one of the most abundant materials on Earth that could slash the cost of EVs and home energy storage in the next few years, and that almost nobody is talking about yet. You're going to want to see that one.